You just living from pay to paycheck. When I get to get paid, cost of living high, the pressure high, getting worse every day. When the man call you for something, you just do it's another bill. You want in this but you can't take it and have nothing inside your will. Well, every day you feel you want chuck it, cause it seems you don't have no luck. You got families, plenty friends, but nobody don't give up. Well, everybody go through the struggle. Some people get worse than you. We have some people existing and they don't have a clue. You can't do this thing without faith. Trusting God and you will be great. Nothing about the way. You've been young and I can relate. When my burden is overweight. Nothing about the way. You just living from pay to paycheck. When I get paid, cost of living high, the pressure high, getting worse every day. When the man call you for something, you just do it's another bill. You want in this but you can't take it and have nothing inside your will. Well, every day you feel you want chuck it, cause it seems you don't have no luck. You got families, plenty friends, but nobody don't give up. Well, everybody go through this struggle. Some people get worse than you. We have some people existing and they don't have a clue. You can't do this thing without faith. Trusting God and you will be great. Nothing about the way. You've been young and I can relate. When my burden is overweight. Nothing about the
way. Into Jim and Georgetown, there's a large, perhaps the largest billboard in the country, stating that Dr. Jagan is the father of the nation. Let me say one, I've had for years a cordial relations with Dr. Jagan, very charming man, energetic, and I believe committed to those things he believed in. Second, I recommend that we read in yesterday's Kaichur News a letter by his son, Chedi Joey Jagan, where he extols the virtues of his father and at the same time is critical of the fact that the ruling cabal is attempting to use Dr. Jagan's name for dishonorable purposes. I share every word in Joey's letter, but to name him father of the nation is an absurdity. First, Jagan would not have wanted that kind of publicity because, as Joey said, he was a man of humility and compassion. Secondly, if you go through the history of this country, you'll find that Dr. Jagan made some missteps which could not qualify him for that position of being father of the nation. I believe that it is good to state that, like a good preacher, you honor him, but to canonize him to sainthood is another matter. After the Washington Constitution in 1953, Jagan began his errors, all because he did not accept that in a country like Guyana, we should play not along the lines of any of the superpowers, but between. On the 2nd of June, just weeks after they got into office, the Commonwealth requested all countries to issue a statement of loyalty to the new queen for her coronation. Dr. Jagan refused to do this, and Burnham said that was a mistake. Later that same month, June 1953, Ethel and Julius Rosenberg were executed in the United States for treason, for allegedly selling atomic secrets to the Soviet Union. Again, one advised to advert to the sanctity of life and ended there. Jagan, on the other hand, ranted and raved about the integrity of the trial, etc., etc. Next, as a result of the conflicts within the party, where he was ostensibly the leader and Burnham the chairman, there were incidents at international level that Jagan seemed to ignore. In 1955, at Bandung, leaders in Africa, Asia, and elsewhere met to deal with the new emergence of imperialism, what they described as the non-aligned movement. Jagan showed no interest in this process and fast-tracked to 1961 in Belgrade, when the non-aligned movement was certified. Again, Jagan showed no interest. It was Burnham who, when he got into office, ensured that we honored the men who crafted and initiated the non-aligned movement. And if you go to the gardens opposite to the opposite St. George's Cathedral, it is there. It was Burnham's initiative who honored those four great men: Nasser of Egypt, Bronze Tito of Yugoslavia, Nehru of India, and Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. I make this point to say that Dr. Chedi Jagan obviously had an interest in supporting one side of the vicious Cold War. In 1961, in the famous rocking chair meeting with John F. Kennedy, who wanted to help him, he was asked the question, "Are you a communist?" He couldn't answer. Before that, we saw elements within the PP which suggested that the party and the government and the people of Ghana should go in a particular direction. Burnham's position has always been, and I believe that is the position of the PNC unto this day, that we shall be pawns of neither the East nor the West. Dr. Jagan did not understand it. So how could he therefore be termed the father of the nation? A father seeks to protect his family and to ensure that the events that he deals with are such that it promotes the welfare, the dreams, and the objectives of that family. The objective of Guyana at that time was to secure independence or be part of the wider federation. An interesting book, which I'm sure Dr. Jagan would have read, titled Annexation to the United States versus Confederation of the West Indies. All of the leaders then opted to move towards Confederation of the West Indies. So in 1958, when the West Indies Federation was established, for reasons which he never explained, he kept Guyana out of that union. It collapsed in 1962 for reasons which refer to the problems in Jamaica, etc. But the point I want to make here is, how could you deem a man the father of the nation who shied away from a union of the Caribbean states? It was in 1955 at Dickinson Bay that the three Bs got together and rekindled the idea of what we know today as CARICOM. They met at Dickinson Bay, Burnham, Byrd, and Barrow. Byrd of Antigua, Barrow of Barbados. At that time, because of the pressures of the Cold War, the other leaders shied away from such a meeting. But those three men must be held in reverence for their courage and perspicacity to make the Caribbean a nation state. There are other issues which I would leave a little later, but the absurdity is compounded by this fact. After the 61 elections, there was an independence conference in 62. The three leaders could not agree, Degar, Burnham, and Jagan. When they met again, Burnham suggested that we go back to the people of Ghana and put the main issues to them in the form of a plebiscite. Dr. Jagan, on the other hand, said his exact words, "I have great faith and confidence in the British sense of fair play and justice." And he left it to the British to break the indecisions of the three leaders and make a decision. When the British came out with positions which Jagan did not like, which was one, elections before independence, he wanted independence now. Two, retention of the voting age at 21. And three, a new system of proportional representation, because even though Jagan got 20 seats out of the 35 seats, the figure showed that he did not get a majority of voters and that the first pass of the system did not reflect the will of the people. When the British came out with the decision, he was angry and came back with what he said, a hurricane of violence. Those who suffered the pain at that period will know what happened. But the absurdity is this. In November 1965, Dr. Jagan was persuaded to attend the Independence Conference at Lancaster House in London to iron out the details, to work out the modalities, to settle the major issues so that we can move to independence. Dr. Jagan was not present at that historic conference when the details and the date for independence was fixed. How can that person therefore be the father of a nation which was technically established at a date and time that he had nothing to do with, and in fact refused to be part of the dialogue? Duncan Sands, his own party member, said, "Chedi, attend the meeting so you can be part of that historic moment when the date for independence was fixed." My position is, I will call as an elder upon the leader of the People's National Congress and the leader of the opposition to respectfully ask that that sign be torn down. I don't know how much it cost, but that sign is part of the propaganda blitz to fool our young people, to deceive visitors that Jagan was the father of the nation. I say no more. The friend to my left a moment ago adverted to the oncoming month of Ramadan. It is on the heels of what the Christians will celebrate as Easter. It was Burnham who gave public holidays to the Hindu and the Muslim community in this country. Jagan had 7 years to do it. He never made a move in that direction. How can he therefore be baptized father of the nation? There are issues which I can deal with, but for time, I will pause and hope that the media can ask questions, and I hope that we get national support to remove that abomination, that obnoxious sign describing Jagan as father of the nation. A man I liked, a good man, but you could not elevate him to that position as father of the nation. I mentioned Burnham a moment ago, but that's a matter for public debate. And let me say this, if there's anyone, it should be Forbes Burnham. He took us out of the murky waters of the Cold War, and this generation may not appreciate the intensity, the difficulties of having the guile, the intelligence, and the wisdom to navigate independence through the difficulties of the Cold War. But what you see here, not to answer your question directly, is an oligarchy who's trying to burnish their image by making Jagan this father of the nation. It is not new. And Adam, you would know that on May Day 1969, as a result of long discussions and dialogue, the airport, which was then known as Atkinson Airport, named after an American entrepreneur, an engineer, and developer, it was named after Amerindian brothers, where the sheetrocks found in some of the rivers in Berbice and elsewhere, they found these paintings, these carvings, which was called Timali, but because of translation problems, is now Timeri. Burnham ensured that that airport, the main international airport, was named to honor our indigenous people. Without discussion, without dialogue, without explanation, this oligarchy, this cabal at the PPP, named it Jagan, Chedi Jagan Airport. And when a noise was made, they then went to Parliament to use their majority and had it certified, thereby insulting, paying scant regard to the very people they are now talking about helping. I spoke over the past few days to prominent Amerindian leaders, and they are very upset. But, you know, they say nothing these days. So to answer your question, if there's somebody to name as father of the nation, it is Forbes Burnham.
Again, I have to listen to Bharrat Roseanne Jagdeo's rant. You know, the only way I can describe Bharrat Jagdeo is as an imp. When this man cannot deal with the arguments that people raise, he lifts up his frock and bows. I'm not going to abuse today, but I'm going to dissect what he would have said so people will understand. This man lacks the intellectual capacity to analyze things and to respond to people in a sound intellectual way. As a consequence, he resorts to abusing. He ranted and raved about what Hamilton Green said. But he failed to even challenge one thing that Hamilton Green spoke about. Hamilton Green pointed out clearly, why is it Forbes Burnham is superior to Chedi Jagan in terms of the nomenclature, father of the nation. But he can't respond to the argument, so he merely abuses. But look, Guyanese, we have to be clear. What Jagdeo is doing here is to seek to shift attention away from himself. First of all, right now, he's embroiled in a 35 million ID card scandal in which the whole country recognizes that this is another scam. Because all around, people are saying you can get those ID cards for less than half of that amount. So he wants to distract. But let us focus. He's involved in a very terrible transaction that is going to cost Guyana money. He also wants to distract from the high cost of living. We gave him a number of proposals in the budget to deal with the high cost of living. We gave him a number of proposals in the budget to deal with poverty. But they cannot, because they are so greedy They are focusing everything on infrastructure so that they can enjoy the corruption that comes from that. And so we must understand what he's doing. He's trying to shift away, distract people from the fact that the government is under consistent criticism for its racism. Abusing cannot remove the fact that this government is racist and is discriminating against people. He is trying to shift focus away from the fact that they promised 50,000 jobs and they cannot deliver it. And they start to deliver 10 days work, and even that they can't organize because the people are not getting work to do, and many of them have got to wait long for the money. So let us understand that Jagdeo lacks the intellectual capacity to respond to arguments that are well made. And that is why he ended up using Comrade Hamilton Green and calling him a fossil. He has an obsession with fossil, but in this case, it's fossil fuel. Oil is sending him mad. And as people call for transparency and accountability, he's getting even more mad. And so, but let's look at him talking about people don't want this country to be placed in the hands of the youth. The person who can be accused of not placing this country in the hands of the youth is you, Bharrat Jagdeo. You don't even allow young Irfan Ali to have a press conference by himself. No minister of your government can have a press conference on their own. Everything is about you. That is not promoting youth. That is promoting dictatorship. You are a dictator. And the man is so confused. He said that the APNU AFC had no plans. But in the very conversation, he criticized David Patterson's plan for a high-span bridge over the Demerara River, criticized the feasibility study, and then own it as if it is his. It is the APNU AFC idea piloted by David Patterson. And so, how do you on the one hand say there are no plans, and then discuss one of the plans? It's a high level of contradiction and stupidity. And then he proceeds to talk about building 5 highways. Let me remind Bharrat Jagdeo that one of the highways he's talking about is the road from Linden to Mobura, a road which they didn't want to build, a road which the program was developed by the APNU AFC. And when they came to power, they decided that they will not do it. It is pressure from the British that is causing them to do that road. So don't come as if you have plans for highway. There was also, Patterson was also working on a plan road from Ogle. And that idea has been there since Burnham time. And Patterson was about to implement it. Now, you should be the last person to speak. Everything you handle smacks incompetence. You had the East Bank Road congested. Rather than follow Patterson's proposal and do the road from Soosdyke to Ogle, you bring a road down Mandela Avenue, Sherrill Street, and now you have made that street congested, and you're fighting to do ancillary streets so people could come off of the road. That is incompetence. That is not a plan. You have no plan. Your only focus is on getting rich at the expense of the people. You build Diamond, made it a cul-de-sac, and people couldn't get out. Now you're trying to rectify them. You are creating more problems. So don't tell us but no plans. We always have plans, and you are now owning some of our plans like if it is your own. And you're complaining about COVID. I wonder if you forgot that you told people that you had a plan to deal with COVID. So don't come now crying that you inherited the problems with COVID. You purported to have a plan when you didn't have any. So we know what you're doing. You're seeking to distract from the high level of corruption. It is your own Ralph Ramkaran who described your government as a kleptocracy. For those who don't know, a kleptocracy is a government of thieves. It is not we in the PNC that said that. It is Ralph Ramkaran, looking at the behavior of the PPP, concluded that you're a highly kleptocratic party. It is unbelievable that you can talk about competence. You cannot show one successful project throughout your time. Time and time again, we have pointed out, Skeldon failed under you. Fiber optic cable, you had the most scams in the world, and yet you will use the word integrity? By Jagdeo, you have to be a joke. If you believe in yourself, come let us debate. I've said that before. You like abusing by yourself. Let us have a debate on the development of these countries and ideas for the development of this country. You cannot do that. You talk about rigged elections. You are known for being involved in election irregularities and illegalities. If you believe you can win a free and fair election, then stop the argument. Let's have a clean voters list and biometrics. Nobody would be able to thief, and there'll be no accusation. So I'm saying this to you. Agree to a clean voters list and biometrics tomorrow morning, and let us go to the election. You're a complete failure. You are incompetent. And so don't go down the road. Now you're talking about building 12 hospitals. Again, a scheme for corruption. You have to first improve the health system. Hospitals don't make a health system work. It is the human resource in there and the systems to deliver on health. We inherited from you in 2015 a hospital in which maternal deaths were high. We brought those maternal deaths down, and now you are back up with your maternal deaths. Telling us you will build 12 hospitals is just telling us you're giving contracts to the boys. It doesn't tell us how you're going to improve the health system. It doesn't tell you why now in Albyston, Charlestown, you can't go to any of the clinics where you close down one virtually and get any of the pharmaceuticals recommended. Yet you're talking about hospitals. We need a proper health system. Hospitals by themselves do not constitute the improvement in the health system. What it constitutes is an opportunity for your illegalities. And I want to say this to you. In power, Forbes Burnham delivered the most to the people of Guyana. When Forbes Burnham came to power in 1964, they didn't have 6 secondary schools in this country. When he left power, there were secondary schools all over this country. When Forbes Burnham came to power, Bharrat Jagdeo, they were Red Road from Cariverton right down to Georgetown. East Bank was red mud, all around. It is Burnham that built the network of roads in this country. And so I don't know if you believe by just getting up there and lying every time you will succeed. A liar, some people say, is a thief, but I wouldn't call you that. But I just want you to note that most people in this country believe that a lawyer is a thief. And I want to say this to you. In our budget presentations, we showed you that we have plans. And I will speak again on us recommending a rent-to-own, which would help the people of Guyana, but you too shame to adopt it. You are not anything of consequence. You have been a failed leader. You should go into the sunset and allow the very young people you talk about to emerge. Because at present, all you're doing is ensuring that Guyana doesn't develop. You had the face to talk about increase in non-oil production sector. It is so ridiculous. I do not believe you still have human qualities. I believe you lack the intellectual capacity to be involved in sensible, organized debates, and therefore you are forced to resort to becoming a yard fowl that abuses with no sound ideas for the development of Guyana. And as to the changes in the PSA, it is not you that make the changes. What some of the things you have adopted is that came from us. They came from Glenlal and others. You have no original ideas of your own except this desire to get wealthy at the expense of the people of Guyana. The Guyanese people, I'll say to you, let us focus on the issues in Guyana and do not be carried away by this madman abusing every time people make serious challenges to his incompetence, the government's incompetence, the government corruption, and government discrimination. Do not be fooled by Bharrat Jagdeo. Many of the other issues I will deal with in the coming week.
Pay to paycheck. When I need to get paid, cost of living high, the pressure high, getting worse every day. When the man call you for something, you just do it's another bill. You want in the cell, but you can't take it, and I'm nothing inside your will.
Fellow Guyanese, today, 21st March, marks the United Nations International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. The 2023 theme focuses on the urgency of combating racism and racial discrimination, 75 years after the adoption of the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights. Against this backdrop, I take the opportunity to speak to the nation on the necessity and urgency of building better race relations and eliminating all forms of discrimination in Guyana. In so doing, we in the opposition wish to highlight two of the articles, Article 2 and 7, in the historic Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Article 2 states, in part, everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration, without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. And Article 7 states, all are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. All are entitled to equal protection against any discrimination in violation of this declaration and against any incitement to such discrimination. We in the PNCR in the opposition have stood and fought and continue to stand and fight against all forms of inequality, injustice, indignity, oppression, and discrimination in Guyana and in the wider world. While racial discrimination continues to dominate our national discourse and scar our national psyche, let us in no way underemphasize the reality that many persons often face discrimination because of their ethnicity, political affiliation, religion, gender, social status, residence, and other statuses. Women, for example, face discrimination for their sex alone, but also when their race or religion intersects with their sex. Indigenous people face discrimination not only because of their race or ethnicity, but also because of their relative social and economic disempowerment. Indo-Guyanese face discrimination when they choose to support a party other than the PPP. For us, therefore, a comprehensive national anti-discrimination agenda must focus on achieving harmonious race relations, women empowerment, equality of opportunity for all, and the minimizing of all forms of discrimination. We in the opposition, therefore, join in the international call for concrete actions and a united stance to fight inequality and discrimination. Lip service and sporadic actions will not work. Guyana needs a national action plan on race relations, gender empowerment, and anti-discrimination. Such a plan is not only a moral imperative, but also a key driver of economic growth and social progress. When all Guyanese have the opportunity to reach their full potential, when all Guyanese feel respected and included, we all benefit from their contributions to society. A national plan or agenda must be built on three distinct but mutually supporting pillars, all of which are reflected in the Guyana Constitution itself. These three pillars are: pillar number one, the fostering of good ethnic and other relations. For the PNCR and the opposition, the focus here will be to ensure all citizens feel that their identity, culture, and rights are respected by the state and by their fellow citizens, as well as to ensure citizens of different ethnicities and other identities do not live in silos but can engage and cooperate with one another. Education will be a key factor here. In particular, we need to educate people about the history and experiences of different racial and ethnic groups in Guyana, as well as about the social, economic, and political factors that contribute to racial tension and division. This includes promoting greater cultural exchange and intercultural communications, as well as promoting diversity and inclusions in schools and workplaces. Additionally, political parties and leaders have a critical role to play. Political leaders should promote a vision of a united and inclusive society and work towards building consensus and cooperation between different racial and ethnic groups. This includes promoting greater representation and participation of unrepresented groups in the political process, as well as promoting greater dialogue and collaboration between different political parties. Pillar number two, the elimination of racial and other forms of discrimination. The focus here is to ensure all prohibited forms of unequal treatment of citizens are eliminated in policies and practices, and those cases of discrimination that result from unintended consequences and implicit bias. Here, we must strive to ensure that everyone has equal access to economic opportunities, regardless of their race, ethnicity, gender, or other identities. We must create policies that promote equal opportunity and equity, and we must also work to eliminate discrimination in all its forms. We need a government that will proactively establish policies that address these issues. Fellow Guyanese, we need to address the immediate needs of communities in all 10 regions that are most affected by poverty, inequality, and discrimination. This means providing targeted support for education, healthcare, gainful employment, and basic services, as well as addressing barriers to economic opportunity and assets such as access to finance, land, social safety net, and affordable housing. Pillar number 3, the promotion of equity and equal opportunity. We must ensure that even in the absence of discriminations, efforts are made to level the playing field and to secure opportunities and resources for disadvantaged ethnic and social groups. In building on these 3 pillars, we must all subscribe to some common values and principles on race relations and anti-discrimination in general. These basic principles include: human rights are inalienable. Rights are inherent to every single human being and are not concessions granted by the state. Good governance. We must promote greater transparency, accountability, and good governance at all levels of the society. This means ensuring that institutions are accountable to the people they serve and that public resources are used effectively, efficiently, and to promote the public good. It also means promoting greater civic engagement and participation in the democratic process and protecting the fundamental rights and freedoms of all Guyanese. Corruption. We must address the issue of corruption. Corruption is a major obstacle to economic growth and social progress, and it undermines public trust in government and institutions. However, as a nation, our fight against corruption will not be successful if there are ethnic and other divisions in our country. Concrete actions are needed. In Guyana, it is past time to shift the national dialogue to the formulation and implementation of concrete actions. On several occasions over the past year, we in the opposition have described the specific actions we would support and execute to combat all forms of discrimination and to promote race relations. We will do the following. 1, boost the capability and impact of the Ethnic Relations Commission, the Public Procurement Commission, the Women and Gender Equality Commission, the Human Rights Commission, and the Indigenous Rights Commission. Through increased funding, prompt appointments and reappointment of commissioners, and the facilitating of international technical support, these agencies must become true change agents. 2, implement ethnic impact assessment as a requirement for every major government program or policy. Such assessments must identify and mitigate, possibly eliminate problems that may unduly, intentionally or unintentionally create or exacerbate racial and other inequalities. 3, activate the Fiscal Transfer Act according to the Act itself. Provide for the formulation and implementation of objective criteria for the purpose of the allocation of resources to local democratic organs, thereby reducing discrimination against communities regardless of their voting patterns or social profiles. 4, create an equitable social protection and assistance system that is structured and professionalized. Delivery of benefits will be managed and manned by a modern public service and not by ministers and other party hacks walking around with the people's money in bags. 5, introduce set-asides in government contract awards to reduce the uneven playing field caused by legacy and ongoing discrimination. Afro-Guyanese, indigenous people, women, youths, and other underrepresented groups must and will benefit. As we seek to be more inclusive in awarding contracts, the system will remain mostly competitive and no one will be treated unfairly. 6, increase transparency of government decisions and affairs. We will empower citizens with the right to know and the right to information by, among other ideas, revising and fully activating the Access to Information Act. 7. Encourage more grassroots community efforts to foster race relations. 8. Introduce multi-ethnic studies in lower schools to educate students to be able to respectfully engage with diverse people, including those of different ethnicities, and to express pride in their own identity without denying the value and dignity of other people. 9. Fund and otherwise encourage academic research and national polling to guide policy making and to measure progress. 10. Set up a permanent multi-stakeholder task force with a mandate to prevent and reduce open election-related hostilities and conflict. This national task force on the prevention of election violence will include high-level representation from the security service, contesting political parties, GCOM, local councils, the media, and persons of knowledge. In conclusion, we are at a critical moment in our country's history. Further division in disunity will only rob us of the realization of our full potential as a people, while the PPP friends, families, and favorites get rich through corruption. We must come together as one nation and confront the challenges we face. We must work towards a more equitable society where all Guyanese have access to economic opportunities and can live with dignity and respect. We must promote a greater sense of shared values and a shared destiny. We also need to recognize the critical role of civil society in promoting equal opportunity and social justice. Here I'm talking about genuine civil society organizations, not groups with partisan political agendas masquerading as civil society. In this area, the Private Sector Commission has some work to do. We must also recognize that community organizations, non-governmental organizations, and grassroots movements are essential to ensuring that the voices of marginalized groups are heard and they have a seat at the table in decision-making processes. Promoting racial unity and social justice in Guyana requires a collective effort from all sectors of society. We all have a responsibility to speak out against racism and discrimination, to challenge stereotypes and prejudice, and to promote greater understanding and respect between different racial and ethnic groups. Building a society where everyone can thrive, regardless of their race, ethnicity, sex, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status will not be easy. But I'm confident that we can overcome these challenges and build a better future for our country. Fellow Guyanese, I end with an extract from the preamble of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Whereas it is essential, if man is not to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. I thank you.
You just living from pay to paycheck. When I get to get paid, cost of living high, the pressure high, getting worse every day. When the man call you for something, you just know it's another bill. You want end this but you can't take it and have nothing inside your will. Well, every day you feel them and chuck it, cause it seems you don't have no luck. You got families, plenty friends, but nobody don't give up. Well, everybody go through this struggle. Some people get worse than you. We have some people existing and they don't have a clue. You can't do this thing without faith. Trusting God and you will be great. Nothing about the way. when my burden is overweight. Nothing about the way. You just living from pay to paycheck. When I get to get paid, cost of living high, the pressure high, getting worse every day. When the man call you for something, you just know it's another bill. You want end this bill, but you can't take it, and have nothing inside your will. Well, every day you feel you want chuck it, cause it seems you don't have no luck. You got families, plenty friends, but nobody don't give up. Well, everybody go through this struggle. Some people get worse than you. We have some people existing, and they don't have a clue. You can't do this thing without faith. Trusting God and you will be great. Nothing about the way. You've been down and I can relate. When my burden is overweight. Nothing